Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and today I'm moving on to It's a Wrap number 2. This is where I'm wrapping up the books that I've been reading. So I'm trying to film these as and when I have finished reading the books, and I'm going to have to go fast because my battery is running out. But I have just finished 2 books which I wanted to talk about. The first one I'm going to talk about briefly because myself and the lovely Caitlin from Kitty G have just done a live show on my channel about this book. It was our pick for the Welcome Book Prize challenge that we're doing. This was the winner of the 2014 Welcome Book Prize, and it's called Far From the Tree, Parents, Children and the Search for Identity by Andrew Solomon. Now, as I say, we've just filmed a live show on this, talking quite in depth about our thoughts on this book, but needless to say, it was a 5-star read for both myself and Caitlin, and it was a complete shock because neither of us really enjoy the cover. We felt it was quite misleading. It makes it look, I don't know whether it makes it look more twee or boring. It's a really brilliant look into identity parenting. So I'm not sure where I got to yesterday because my battery ran out, and so I just started the video. So I was talking to you about Far From the Tree by Andrew Solomon and how much both myself and Caitlin loved this book. And as I said before, you can check out our Welcome Prize live chat to find out more details about how we both felt about this in depth. But it was just such a surprising read. I went into this with some trepidation. It was very thick, it looked quite dense, it was non-fiction. I'd been finding with the Welcome Book Prizes that they were quite heavy going and just not what I was looking for from a non-fiction book. And this really surprised me. It's got loads of research. I mean, this is a massive amount of research that Andrew Solomon's done into all the various topics that he talks about. And yet it doesn't feel bogged down by all of the information and the research and the statistics that he's found. It's split into chapters and they're encompassed in a sandwich between son and father, which are the first and the last chapter. In Son, he talks about being a son, he talks about coming out as gay to his father and what that meant for their family. And in the end, in the final chapter, he talks about father, and he talks about how he becomes a father and how that affects him and his life. In between that, we look at chapters like transgender, dwarfs, schizophrenia, autism, crime, rape, Down syndrome, so many different things that can happen or happen within a family or happen to a family, and how that can change things, and how being having a child that's schizophrenic, something I didn't realise. Schizophrenia tends to manifest itself at puberty. So parents go along having this child and they get used to that child and the child's personality and how that child is and the things the child likes, and they form memories together. And then along comes puberty, and all of a sudden that child isn't the same child anymore. Part of their memories are often missing, and their personalities change, and how that feels for different families. And within each of these chapters, he doesn't just follow one family, he follows multiple families in multiple situations, often from multiple countries, and he looks into how different things affect families, and how the outside world and bigotry and how certain places perceive things can really change a family, and how families have to fight to stay together and to do what's best for their children. And as a parent, I can appreciate that, and I know that I would go to the ends of the world to make sure that my daughter was happy and comfortable and secure. It's just a really brilliant book, full of information and research and stories about real people and real lives, and I definitely recommend it. And it was a big 5 stars from me. The next book I want to talk about, I read this week, has come as a little bit of a surprise. If you've watched my haul, you will have seen me haul this recently. It is part of a trilogy, and it came into my hands in a very unusual way. It's a self-published book, and my mother-in-law texted me one night and said, just been to an event and I've met this lady and she writes books, and I told her about your booktube channel, and I really think that you know, you'll like her books. You read fantasy, don't you? And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds brilliant. And she said, well look, I'll give her your email and get her in contact. So I got in contact with her and I said, you know, I've heard about your books, I've looked them up, I think there's something I'd be interested in. And she very kindly sent me the whole trilogy. Now when I received them, I was like, I'm not sure I've done the right thing here. The front covers make me think of yoga books. They don't make me, they don't scream fancy to me. And again, because we have this perceived image of what a fantasy cover should look like. And so I was like, oh, I'm not sure. And I sort of, and I thought, well, I've got them, the author's kindly sent them to me, I'm going to give them a go. And after reading the back, the synopsis sounded great. It's about a girl and it's set in this world, and there's a place called Empire, and you know, she's got to try and save the people, and there's friendships and romance, and I thought, okay, this sounds pretty good. And so I read it recently as part of the biannual bibliothon. This was my first in a series, and I really needed that push just to dive in, and I really enjoyed this. It's set in this world where the backstory, so to speak, without spoiling too much, is that there was meant to have been 3 gods, and these 3 gods decided that they would put their descendants on Earth. And so they had 3 lots of descendants, and they had body, spirit and mind, and these descendants would then look over the people, and people are born either with sort of inclinations towards body, spirit or mind. So bodies tend to be athletic, quite strong, maybe good at running, or quite flexible, a particular body type, and you know, are really to do with body and physical fitness. Spirit is all about meditation and telepathy and communication in that way, and although many people don't have any of those abilities, that is the place where they suit the most. They've got certain aspects and traits of the spirit. And then you've got mind, who are, you know, the thinkers, the people that use their mind maybe for intellectual things, who research and reading, and everybody is in one of these camps, and the descendants then sort of, there is a descendant for each of these temples. And we find out at the beginning that Anita, our main character, is a body, and yet she's got some abilities in the others, but she's a body. And the descendants are coming to town because one of the descendants has died, and so their heir is going to take over. And the way to be a descendant is you're born into it, so it's through the bloodline, and so you can only become a descendant if you are born of a descendant. And we follow the story really from there. There's a conspiracy going, there's some political intrigue, there's a bit of a romance for Anita, and I'd definitely say that if you require your fantasy and your romance fantasy to not have a love triangle, then this might not be for you. However, it didn't feel very triangle-y to me. I think I kind of knew who I wanted her to be with. But it's definitely a romance fantasy, so there's romance in there and there is a bit of a love triangle. I just really enjoyed where they went with this. I really enjoyed that Harriet is, who's the author's name, it's H.R. Moore, Harriet Moore, didn't back down from some of the more nitty-gritty and getting a bit dirty and getting a bit violent. I quite like that. I thought it was a really rich and well thought out world. I thought it makes sense. Sometimes I think you read these sort of fantasy stories and you can feel like there's big gaping holes there that don't make sense, and some of the mythology and lore you're like, that doesn't make sense, and then you get to a bit later on and you're like, doesn't tie up with what we were talking about and what was going on. It felt very real. I could have pictured myself being there. The friendships in here were really good and really strong, and we did follow them along, as well as Anita's character. I thought the characters were well fleshed out. I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes, so I definitely recommend it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, a strong recommend 4 stars. I know that she has these on Amazon, and I think at some point they were on there for 99p, so if it's something that you wanted to try out, I think you can get them for the Kindle. but I recommend these. Well, this one so far, the first in the series, has really got me hooked. So I'll be trying to read the next two, hopefully next month, I think, because yeah, I need to know what happens to Anita. So that's that one. And then the third book that I've read recently is Lullaby by Layla Slimani. I was very kindly gifted this by the lovely Jen Campbell. She had a spare copy when we met up for the meetup. She had some books she was passing on, and she passed this one on to me, and I was really thankful. It's a book that came out earlier this month, or actually about a week or so ago. It's very short, it's just over 200 pages, and the story is pushed to be a crimey type thriller with sort of a literary edge. It's a story about Louise, who is a nanny. There's a French family, a mother and a father with 2 young children, and the mother has been a stay-at-home mum. She's desperately now needing to go back to work for her own sanity, for herself. She misses work. She wants to go back, and she finished training as a lawyer as she became pregnant, and she wants to go back and work as a lawyer. They decide that they're going to bite the bullet and get a nanny, and they're very picky. They're worried about the type of nanny they're going to get, and then they end up hiring Louise to be their nanny. She comes with great references, and she just seems like a dream. She's perfection. The mother and father come home, and she's cleaned the house, and she's done the cooking, and the children are happy, and she helps organize. She organizes their birthday party, and basically just takes over as a nanny come Mary Poppins type character. They joke at one point, even to the point where they end up taking her on holiday with them. And we know, no spoiler here, from the very first chapter that the children are dead and the nanny has killed them. And I think the problem I had with this book, because that sounds great, doesn't it? Everything I've told you sounds really good, and the writing here is really lovely, but I was just waiting for it to make more sense, and we were left very much open, which I'm not good with. I don't like to be left too much in the dark at the end, to have to unravel it and tie it all up myself. And I didn't feel like I had a satisfactory conclusion to this. I didn't feel like I really understood why and what the reasons were and the ins and outs of it, and I didn't feel like the backstory that we got a little bit about Louise's life in there, I didn't feel like that explained much of it. The writing itself was really good, and I did feel that tension, and I did feel that sense of unease when I was reading, and so it did give me that, but it just didn't do anything for me, and I struggled, and I felt like it lagged a bit in the middle, and I was just waiting for more explanation, for more than just the continual ins and outs of the day of the nanny. And yeah, I don't know, it just wasn't enough for me, and so I was really disappointed. But I ended up giving this one 2 stars. It just wasn't for me. I'm sure lots of people really enjoy it, but this particular one wasn't for me, unfortunately, so I gave it 2 stars. And so that's what I've been reading recently. I'm currently listening to Bodies of Light by Sarah Moss on audiobook, because that is going to be mine and Caitlin's next month, or one of our Welcome Book Prize books for next month, so I'm getting a bit of a head start. And I don't know what else I'm going to pick up, what my next physical book will be, but check out my It's a Wrap number 3 in a week or so, whenever I get enough books read, to find out what I picked up next. Anyway, what are you reading? Have you read any of these? Did any of these sound up your street? Let me know, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.